Hello and welcome to another edition of The Rest is Entertainment Questions show.
Questions and answers show. And you remind me who you are?
Sorry, I genuinely didn't mean to do that. And I also nearly said the rest is politics. I'm Marina Hyde.
I told you Xander once said, hello, my name is Alexander Armstrong. Welcome to Countdown. He's done that so many times.
Right, okay, thank you. I feel I'm in rather more professional company.
What was Xander?
Yeah, no, okay.
No, he's very professional.
Sorry, who are you again?
Yeah, Richard Osman. Hello.
Right,
welcome to the questions and answers edition of The Rest is Entertainment. We left everyone on the world's worst cliffhanger after Tuesday's show.
Luckily, Google was shut down between now and
so
Tuesday, so no one was
the
able to work out how tall the rock actually is.
Yeah. It's listen, and also, by the way, if you did Google it, there's not an immediate answer. Like to most people, they'd be like, "How tall are you? 5'6". How tall are you?
Yeah,
6'7".
well, that tells its own story.
With The Rock, you have to go to a number of different sources, correct?
Yeah, and many of them are unreliable. Most notably, The Rock himself, who bills himself as, I believe, what is it, 6'4"?
6'5".
6'5". I'm so sorry.
The Rock says he is, which for a lot of people be tall. To me is.
That is bullshit. The Rock is not 6'5". The Rock is not. His wrestling height was supposedly 6'2". Again. Challenge. I think that from pictures of who he's been pictured next to, Obama, people like that, people are able to, who actually doesn't need to lie about his height. People are placing him, I think, around the 6 foot mark. I've seen 6'1", but I honestly don't believe it because I've seen him in scenes with. There's a very funny photo actually, which you should look up online. It's supposedly a still from the Fast and Furious with The Rock, kind of almost Vin Diesel, although the way they're standing is very odd. And this was, of course, during their feud when Vin Diesel effectively called The Rock a candy ass.
Whoa, he went there.
Yeah, he went there.
Wow.
Vin Diesel, real name Mark Sinclair.
Yeah, Mark Sinclair.
Real name
right?
Mark Sinclair.
Hello, Mark Sinclair.
Mark Sinclair.
He knows that The Rock is sensitive about his candy ass.
Yeah. And potentially his height. No one has ever billed Vin Diesel as 6'5".
And so they're the same height, Vin Diesel.
I think that there is actually I think part of the funny thing about this photo is just the way they're standing, that if you actually thought, hang on, what would this look back if I pulled back? Yeah, there we go. Look, there we go. That now, producer Neil is showing us this. Okay. And if you could, Vin Diesel is about 6 foot to the right of The Rock.
Yeah.
And The Rock is kind of looking into what appears to be some sort of patio doors. I don't know what's happening in the shot. Huge movie. Do go and see it. Anyway, we must get on to the business of the questions and answers.
6'1", we reckon.
Oh, he's not. If he's 6 foot, he's lucky.
There is absolutely no way we're going to. We have to keep mentioning The Rock until he gets in touch.
Did you know that the only thing that Boris Johnson corrected in the entire referendum campaign, the only untruth he corrected, was the one that said he dyed his hair?
Really?
Yes, during it. So if anything's going to get The Rock to ring in, it will be a matter of personal vanity.
Do you think he does dye his hair?
Boris Johnson?
Yeah.
He's long-time listener, first-time caller. I don't think he does dye his hair.
I know it's not a question, but we said ages ago we can't wait for him to start his stint on GB News to talk about that, and yet he still hasn't started. It's
one of those kind of projects that's lost in the sort of showbiz Bermuda Triangle, isn't it? It's we've lost contact with the project. We'll dial in on that next week. Anyway, we must have a question.
Yes, let's have a question. Okay, I have a question from you.
Okay.
This is from Lee Madrick. I don't know if that's the artist, the wonderful artist Lee Madrick, but maybe it is.
If you have a look at his pictures, if it is, by the way, because he paints these really eerie pictures of kind of fantasy abandoned buildings, among other things. They're really, it's such a mood. Have a look.
And by the way, if it isn't that Lee Madrick, then Lee Madrick the painter's just got some amazing publicity from someone having the same name as him. But maybe it is. Lee asks, would you like to buy one of my paintings? No, sorry, it is not him. I'm curious to know when and which shows real-life newsreaders were first used in dramas. The bits of a thriller where suddenly Clive Myrie would pop up on the TV in a show talking about events that connect with the story. How do they go about this?
Okay. I think the first instance of this famously is in the US, but it's not in the way that you're talking about. Walter Cronkite went on the Mary Tyler Moore show.
5'11".
Yeah, we can't do them all now. Walter Cronkite went on the Mary Tyler Moore show, but that was a sitcom. He's the ultimate news anchor, American news anchor. But I think he played himself. I've actually seen the episode, and he's meeting Mary Tyler Moore's sort of great friend who kind of completely goes to pieces because he can't believe he's meeting Walter Cronkite. So he's not doing that thing which I think you're talking about, Lee, when you're
newsflash.
Yeah. Now, I've got an issue with this happening at all, and I don't. It's become much more prevalent. And it's quite interesting. You can see why they do it, because first of all, it takes care of a lot of exposition.
Yes.
The newsreader can tell you what's happening.
Well, because that's their job. That's
their job.
literally, yeah. Because normally with exposition, you've got one of the characters have to go, yes, but the thing is, the nuclear bunker is in Russia, and don't forget, Russia used to be Ukraine was part of Russia. So, whereas a newsreader,
and if it's a Guy Ritchie show, it will be the woman. It will be Kaya Scodelario, who did that throughout every single episode of The Gentleman. Just had to
your
explain.
favourite show?
Yeah, my favourite show.
Guy Ritchie 5'6".
Pushing. Anyhow. So it takes care of that. Also, it gives it a sort of instant gravitas, because oh my God, Clive Murray's talking about this on the news. This alien invasion must be quite important. In a weird way, so that happens a lot now. But I think it's not good from news presenters' point of view. I don't really like it, because it's like, I think it's sort of, there's enough people don't believe news anyway now. And sorry, this is a rather po-faced reply. Enough people, I don't like it from a journalist point of view at all. But it's funny how even people who are on TV really want to be on TV.
Yeah.
So like, you're on the TV every night, you read the news. Oh, I don't know. It's not the same thing in Doctor Who though, is it? So it's really interesting that happens. But I was trying to think back the absolute sort of first instance of sort of people pretending. And in 1938, when Orson Welles does the War of the Worlds thing, that they made that seem so like a news broadcast that people felt that it was a radio broadcast, also on CBS Radio in 1938, saying that aliens had invaded, Martians have invaded. And popular folklore says that everyone lost their minds and lots of people thought it was real, which I don't think was the case. But what did happen was that the press were very angry about this, because they felt that kind of fake version of news and what have you. Yeah.
Wow.
Way back in the year 1938, and Wells had to sort of give a press conference, honestly, the next day, where he said, sorry, he did very well out of it, of course.
Yeah.
He started well on the way to becoming Orson Welles. But the press were really angry, because they felt that it kind of, as I've said before on this podcast, that American journalism takes itself particularly seriously. So, and that's probably why even when Walter Cronkite goes on Mary Tyler Moore's show, people are saying, oh, I don't think this should have happened. You don't hear that so much in our country.
I like that during 1938 that he'd had to go on the radio and go, listen, guys, don't panic, nothing bad is happening.
Yeah, don't worry, really. No invasions for the foreseeable future.
We are living in peace. Well, again, it's not exactly Lee's question, but the 70s when Morecambe and Wise started putting all the newsreaders, started making them dance and stuff like that, and people like Angela Rippon coming on and dancing, because newsreaders were this sort of incredible breed of very sort of distant patrician.
They hand you the stone tablets and then they're on their way.
Yeah, and then suddenly you go, wait a minute, they're dancing.
Yeah,
and that was the beginning of the end, as far as I'm concerned. That's when television lost it. But yeah, of course, if you are by and large, if you're in the BBC newsroom and a BBC-owned drama come and talk to you, you might do it. Be all sorts of issues about what the programme is. But if it's a kids' TV thing and it's Clive Murray saying that someone's lost a ball, then that's absolutely fine. There'd be certain things they wouldn't do, and ITM would obviously do stuff for channels that they've got deals with as well. But yeah, every single newsreader says yes. There's no way you don't say yes to being on any show. It's like a dream. If ever Pointless is playing in the background on something, I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened. But you always get asked permission.
Yeah.
So that always, someone will always say, oh, they want to have something in the background of this.
Your
thing.
TV show's on TV. Yeah, I know it is. It's a TV show, but you're so excited.
But of course I'm excited. That's like if ever I walk past like a news crew in the street or something, I'm like, oh my God, I might be on. I might be on TV. Oh my God, I have to watch the news. But yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? That I actually think that there you can see why often you need a newsreader, because there's so many things that happen in dramas where you think, sorry, this would be on the TV. This would be on the TV news. So you have to have it. Whether or not you have to have the real people doing it is an issue that I have, but you do have to have it. I remember actually talking about Doctor Who when the first Russell T Davies sort of incarnation of it, and Billie Piper met Christopher Eccleston as that Doctor. They had to get around the fact that, like, obviously you would just Google if you do. So she was Googling, the Doctor and things like that. And there wasn't, because obviously if you Google something, people were saying, you'd get about 1 billion hits for Doctor Who. So not that that's his name, but they sort of got around it in quite a clever way. Because most times people are thinking, this, I think, would be on the news. And it's such a part of the human experience that you sort of want to see it even happening to those characters in a drama where it's being reflected on the news because it's giving it that sense of gravitas.
The one thing I think is interesting when they do have newsreaders on, quite often they don't give the scripts to the news editors to write, which is what I would do.
Yeah,
So
it's like headlines and newspaper headlines on TV.
By the way, that's a whole different thing. But how are they just like the fonts? You just think, I mean, that
What's
that
all this
headline
white
doesn't
space?
fit. Yeah, but also the headline will always be like much more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Local man drives. You think, okay, listen,
Yeah.
it's just that's not going to be what the headline is. But yeah, just get the news editors to write, because they'll do that. If they say, do you want to write this? Here's the script as it is. This is the exposition we need. Can you write that as if it was actually on the news, rather than Clive Myrie having to do like a really long, convoluted thing that would have been subbed down by somebody?
I agree. Yes, they often don't talk like actual news presenters. Oh, I've got one made for you, Richard. Rap beef. Ben Allen says, how real is the ire between Drake and Kendrick Lamar, and how much is just for commercial purposes?
Oh, that's.
Can you do a quick recap on what this is?
Yes, I will
please?
do. So Kendrick Lamar and Drake are in the middle of an enormous rap beef where they keep releasing diss tracks against each other, like really quickly, and really good tracks as well.
3 in one weekend.
Yeah.
One of them did 3 in a weekend.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And by the way, sort of some of the biggest tracks in the world, like Not Like Us, which is Kendrick's new one, it's the biggest song in the world. And Euphoria as well. It's all over.
Do you think
everywhere.
the manager's thinking, oh, now you can work at this pace, can you?
Yeah,
that's good.
Turns out you can write songs. And yeah, this one started. J. Cole and Drake did a song together, and J. Cole essentially said that J. Cole, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar were the 3 biggest names in rap. Okay, which you think would be a nice thing by and large, but these things,
You underestimated the
rap
community.
beefs.
Yeah.
And Kendrick Lamar did a song where he said, it's not the 3 of us, it's just me. I'm the only name. And then Drake came back at him, and Kendrick Lamar's come back. So that was the very beginnings, and the beef that the 2 of them are having, incredibly personal, talking about sort of love children, talking about abuse, talking about all sorts of things. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And yes, I think it is real, for sure.
Yes, I think it's real.
I don't think they like each other. Is it commercially successful for both of them? Yes. Kendrick Lamar is very much getting the better of it.
Yes.
And Drake has many, many, many qualities, but Kendrick Lamar is musically the genius really there. He's won a Pulitzer Prize. I know that doesn't make you a genius, but that's where he operates. And Drake is far more commercial based. So it's this thing. There's these huge tracks everywhere. There's this beef everywhere. So I do think it's real, but there's also an element where it's sort of not real, because rap has always had this. It's been such a big part of rap forever and ever and ever. It's sort of it's got an element of WWF.
Yeah, stage fighting.
About
I
it,
agree.
yeah. And the famous one that of course elevates everything is Tupac and Biggie, and they both ended up getting killed, and that was beef. And so that sort of elevates every single rap battle, because every time you sort of think that there are very, very, very high stakes here. But
and there have been 3 arrests, I think, in the last week or so outside Drake's house of maybe people trying to intrude. It's not at all clear what's happening there, by the way, so I wouldn't want to cast any aspersions, but I would say that there is definitely a real life element of oddness surrounding this.
It's
say nothing of the allegations in the songs, which I will say nothing about.
I mean, they are. Yeah, I think it's probably best not to, isn't it?
Yes.
I think I'd rather say The Rock is 5'11" than comment on some of the things in these songs. But there's a long, I'd say, other than there's a long history of this in rap. The first massive rap. The first massive rap beef was the Roxanne Wars, which was sort of 84, 85 in New York. And that started very slowly. There's a band called UTOF who had a song called Roxanne, which is quite a big hit in New York. And they were supposed to turn up on Marley Marl, another of the hip-hop greats. They were supposed to turn up on his radio show and didn't go. Then Marley Marl released a song with Roxanne Shante, slagging off UTOF. So it took Roxanne, which was UTOF's big song, and did this sort of diss track. UTOF then came back and employed someone who they called the real Roxanne. By the way, neither of these people called Roxanne. So neither of the Roxannes are called Roxanne. Roxanne Shante and the real Roxanne. The real Roxanne was then replaced by somebody else. So the real Roxanne became a slightly different Roxanne. But across the year in New York, there was like 100 tracks going back and forth between different people weighing into the Roxanne rap beef. No injuries, but so it's that thing of reply tracks and diss tracks and stuff like that is incredibly huge. As Jay-Z and Nas had a huge rap beef which ended because Jay-Z released a reply track from Nas called Super Ugly, and Jay-Z's mum said, no, you have gone too far. And so Jay-Z apologized to his mum and apologized to Nas, and they later reunited. That's why you need mums, right?
That's special.
50 Cent and Ja Rule are still
they're still
at it with each other. Cardi B and Nicki Minaj. That's a
big one.
That's a big one, and that sort of show how times changed. That really came to a head in New York Fashion Week. The two of them had a confrontation, and you think that's different to '84 when it was
Yes.
in the projects of the Bronx. Stormzy and Wiley in the UK as well. So it's a big deal. It's good for business, is the truth. But
it's part of the business, and it's just a sort of innate part.
It's part of the business. It does good numbers for everybody. But there's truth behind it, and that's why it works. That's why it always works.
But
because
it feels more
comes from
immediate
somewhere.
now because of the internet. You're releasing a track, but it can go straight out. That's what the weirdness is. It's like there's 3 over a weekend, and everyone is following it like it's a sport.
Well, it's like a game of tennis.
Yeah.
It's so quick. It's been not. But Nas's track about Jay-Z took about sort of 2 months or 3 months for people to actually hear it.
Whereas now it's instant, and people are just sitting there refreshing, basically waiting for the next bit.
But I mean, what it tells you, especially Kendrick Lamar, some of these tracks are unbelievable. They're so good.
Yeah.
And you think, well, you just knock that up in a couple of days.
Yeah.
It goes to show what you can do. I'm assuming he's sort of using, a kit of parts from some other stuff. But there's some really good stuff going on.
Drake, one of the mornings, he tweeted the local news station saying, can you not fly news helicopters over my house because I'm trying to sleep at this time in the morning, which I quite like the idea of him being so big. He's effectively organising a no-fly zone over his own house.
He's like Russia.
Yeah.
So at the moment, it's enormous sort of a lot of social media and tabloid fun. Listen, hopefully it doesn't end badly, but it's been long part of the tradition of rap and hip hop. It's a question for you, Marina, from James Gander. This is a good one because I don't know the answer to this, but I've always wanted to know because people always ask. Listening to a previous episode about the BBC and funding, I was wondering if there would likely be any scope for overseas viewers to be able to purchase a subscription to iPlayer and a similar model to Netflix, etc. Do you think that would work and help fill Auntie Beeb's coffers? As a viewer from New Zealand, I know I would pay.
This is a good one. I was able, fortunately, to ask an expert on this, which is my husband, who works at the BBC, and he said he'd actually remembered once an episode of something like Dragon's Den where somebody said something like, oh, why don't they just, if they wanted to power the national grid, why don't they hook up generators to all the gyms in this country? And the guy just went, 80% of the questions I'm asked at all is this. Why don't we do this? Anyway, I won't bore you with it, other than that the conversion equipment is quite expensive and the amount of energy that you produce is actually very little. But anyway.
Yeah, but think about it. Why don't they?
Yeah, but why don't they? But this is one of the biggest questions ever asked of people who work at the BBC, like, why don't you do it? And the answer is because that would be a relatively small thing. It works much better to sell the programmes individually overseas. And obviously we've talked previously on the show about Doctor Who, and that's now a co-production with Disney Plus, so you can't do that. But there's lots and lots of BBC shows that you can sell around the world, and you make far, far more money from that than you would do from just putting on the schedule that we have and hoping that some people in America want to buy it. It's a much better thing is to divide it into chunks and sell it around the world, which they do. But it is people are always asking this question.
So I think because people in foreign countries who watch the BBC, they're sort of in a minority, is the truth. So people absolutely love it, but there's not enough of them that them paying kind of $9.99 a month would make
and they may not be in a minority. The shows, once they're sold to their local broadcast, their local networks, their local broadcasters, or whatever it is, or onto streamers, then they might they won't be in a minority, and lots of people might watch them. But it's much better to sell things individually than just to put the whole of iPlayer on a thing, and then you can't sell any of it because everyone will say, well, it's just you're already selling it yourselves. So it's much, much better economically. But they have done lots of studies into this at the BBC and concluded always that this would be not a good commercial decision remotely.
That's good to get a definitive answer to that, because I've always wondered. It makes complete sense, because the same with independent production companies. You're not going to take your entire basket of programs and sell them as one thing to an entity. What you do is you maximize it by selling a couple of things to territory X, a couple of things to territory Y.
And we should say that because of what you've just said, the production companies, the BBC doesn't own the rights, exclusive rights to a surprising amount of its own content, and it owns the rights to put it on iPlayer for whatever, but the surprising amount of it is not actually wholly owned by them and able to be sort of parceled off and sold to completely other.
Do you know what the answer to that is? So obvious. I should have known. I've never really.
It's a funny one.
I've
Yeah.
never
Apparently, the
thought
Jim's
it
one is
through.
quite obvious too, but also it does sound good when you first hear it.
Yeah.
I love this one. Hard workers. Damien Boyd. You often hear the phrase, he, she is the hardest working person in television or similar from various entertainment people during conversations or interviews. Who, in your opinion, is the hardest working person in television, Richard?
That's such a euphemism, though, isn't it? For
Yeah.
someone who's on TV too much. Hardest work. Well, I mean, yeah. Normally they're sort of talking about screen presence, and so you would have to say over the last 12 months it's got to be Ramesh because he does so much.
Yeah.
And by the way, does so much so brilliantly. I love Ramesh, and I've never seen him do a show badly. He's just brilliant.
People really like him within the people. So many writers I've spoken to are like, oh, he's a really, really nice guy.
But so I think that what you have there is a sort of interface between somebody who everybody wants to work with, which is Ramesh, and somebody whose work ethic is so huge that they are happy to keep working. By the way, I could live without working. Right, I like staying at home is what I like to do.
Yeah.
So I do shows that I love doing. My shows are because you do 4 or 5 a day, and they're on every day. It sort of feels like you're working more than you are. But someone like Ramesh he's doing lots of stuff abroad, and then he's doing Weakest Link, then he's doing the radio show now. He does all this Sky stuff.
Yeah.
Then you see him pop up and be master of ceremonies at corporates as well. So he's really he's working his socks off. Ramesh also came to fame a little bit later. He was a teacher for many years, so I think is got that mindset quite rightly of I feel incredibly lucky to be doing what I'm doing. I feel incredibly lucky that I'm needed and wanted because I went through many years where I wasn't, and so I'm going to do it. But I think he loves to work, Ramesh. But the real answer to the question, the hardest working person in television, is always someone who's behind the sines.
Yeah, it's not the talent. Sorry,
yeah, I mean, it's really not. I mean, on recording days, sometimes it is. Sometimes if you're, having done most jobs in TV, when you're presenting on a particular day, if I'm doing a day on House of Games, maybe I'm working the hardest of anyone in a sort of way because I'm constantly talking, constantly thinking, constantly keeping the show on the road with an amazing team around me. But for the 4 months before that day and for the 4 months afterwards, when the show has been prepped and the show is being edited, everyone else is working incredibly long hours to make me and make the show look good. Mm-hmm. The people who work the hardest, it's tricky as you go up the ranks. So runners work incredibly hard. And then you become a researcher where sort of all the kind of hard jobs come to you. Then you become an AP, which might be the hardest job of all, which is between researcher and producer. So essentially everything the researchers can't do, they ask you, and everything the producer doesn't have time to do, he asks you as well. So an AP is working incredibly.
For the benefit of people who don't know what an AP is,
associate producer or assistant producer, depending on the industry you're in, and then you get up to executive producer, and that's where it's easy again, where your job only becomes difficult when something goes wrong. And when something goes wrong, you're really, really called into action. But other than that, you just have to make sure the channel are happy. You make sure the talent are happy. It's a relationship job. Stuff goes wrong, it's really, really hard. But from the producer to the AP, it's hard. But I would say maybe like a production manager or production secretary would be the hardest working people in TV. And they're the people who have got the budget in front of them, who are allocating that budget, who are making sure that the studios are booked and all those contracts are signed, and making sure that every single camera operator has a contract, every single makeup artist has the dates of the next show, that every single bit of money has been allocated, that the delivery to the BBC has been done on time, and that all the films and all the forms have been filled in. So they're literally every single thing you could think of in that show, every single person involved in that show, they go through the production manager and production secretary's desk. And so I would say they're the hardest working people in show business. So either production managers or Ramesh is my answer to that. It wouldn't surprise me if Ramesh did his own production management. Oh, this is a question we will both have an opinion on, Marina. Ian Scoogle asks, with the recent releases of certified turkeys like Madame Web and Rebel Moon 1 and 2, it's made me wonder to what extent those involved with a big budget project can tell if it's going to bomb. Do actors realise the script they have presumably read before agreeing to is actually terrible? Or does everyone finish thinking they've made something great and it is a genuine shock when nearly everyone else hates it? That's a very nicely worded question.
It is. It's really nicely, but I would
area.
Just to quickly take care of the actors bit first. I would say that what the script that the actor reads when they sign on will not be the script that they shoot. And that will always be the case. And I think Dakota Johnson, who's in one of the bombs you mentioned in Madam Web, was just like, this became a completely different thing. Whether or not that's, whether she should have had foresight or not. I will tell you that in terms of being involved in a production and you're doing it, and it is, speaking of the hard work of that we were talking about, Richard was talking about on TV, both on films and on sort of television, you are so mad as with tiredness. You've gone on, and it's not going down a mine, and no one's claiming that, but it's very physical for a lot of the kind of below the line crew who are lugging stuff about and working incredibly long hours, going home for just a few hours sleep and then coming straight back the next morning and doing this for months on end. You are not in the position to realise mostly whether or not what's unfolding is good or bad. You might be at the start, and in fact, you might have your best reactions at the start. So if people think like your show is funny at the start, or the show that they're basically filming and helping bring to life is funny, then that might be a good sign. But such bad movies have worked, by the way. I have to say, there's a lot of appalling movies out there, some of which have even won on like Best Picture, Crash. And you're just thinking, how on earth? But so you've got that in your mind. You have to tell yourself this stuff to get you up in the morning when you've had 4 hours sleep and you've got to do it again all week. The second thing, that thing that we've talked about before, nobody knows anything, the William Goldman dictum about Hollywood, which applies just as well to television. If the script has gone through a million rewrites while you're in production, but then Marvel has done that and they've got away with that on loads of things. If you're not making your days, I would say that in a Hollywood movie.
And what do you mean by not making your days?
Making your days is there is a very, very tight schedule of all the shots and all the scenes you're supposed to get in a day. And it might seem to normal people like, so wait, you've got to get 2 minutes of usable footage out of a day, have you? Right, okay. Wow, that really is going down a mine. But funnily enough, it is very, very busy, and you've got to have so many takes and setups, and you have to move on ideally on the schedule, because you think, okay, we'll do these 2 scenes before lunch and these 2 afterwards, whatever it is. And if you're repeatedly getting to the end of the day, you're still going 2 hours over, which you have to do in our country with agreement with the crew, and everyone agrees and say, yeah, we'll do 2 hours, and you still haven't made the day, and that keeps happening, then something is going wrong. And in the case of some of the stuff we've talked about before, like The Rock, if you're only turning up, if he's turning up so late that he's only going to work 4 or 5 hours, then you're not making the days, things are going really wrong, and in lots of ways, people are saying, okay, I don't know, you're worrying on the crew while it's happening. But then a friend of mine who was working on a show with a really sort of esteemed creator and said, thought at the time, this does not feel right. Thought, he's a genius, he'll get away with it, always does. But in that occasion, I don't think the person did get away with it particularly. But it does happen. But it is quite hard to tell when you're a couple of months in, because
I would say, it's fairly impossible. And the interesting thing with any big movie or TV show is everyone's really just looking after their little bit of it. So, wardrobe's looking after wardrobe, cameras are looking after cameras, production design's looking after that. The director should really be across everything, but there's such a lot at the director's door on a movie and at the producer's door on a TV show. Often the writers might have the best idea about whether something's going in the right direction, because all they're concentrating on is the thing that's coming out of the camera, what they're looking at, how it sounds, and their reactions to it. But everyone is doing their bit. There's the adage that if the crew are laughing, then you've got a hit, which has been disproved so many times.
Yeah.
And I love the crew more than anyone, but by and large, the crew are laughing if they think we're getting home early. The worst thing that can happen is if you are doing like a weekly live show and that it's not a hit
because it's rating so badly. That's awful. I can't imagine what that must be like.
And like if you've been working say for Talk TV for the last year, and those people are working just as hard as anybody else who's working in TV. They're still putting together hours of television. They're doing the work. They're making the calls. They're doing the producing. They're they're editing packages together. They're playing them in.
And they're working harder because it's all going wrong and everything, you're not getting any viewers. It's painful.
They know nobody is watching. They know their bosses know nobody is watching, but the bosses can't really admit it. So the bosses, it's pressurized for them.
And you've got to go out there and I've got my happy face on.
Yeah. So when you do a live show and it's working well, we did it's fantastic. We did a show called 24-Hour Quiz, which was a sort of semi-live, was it? I can't really remember. I think it was live. But we knew as we were making it that it was not landing. and you've still got to make it. You've still got to, and you can work out how to fix it halfway through, but you can't because it's live
the more
and it's just going
demoralising
out.
version of it. That's you're
it's
right.
the worst
that
of the
is,
worst.
yeah.
At least with a movie.
And you have to kid yourself.
Yeah.
It's a part of the human condition that in order for you to be sacrificing your family life, certainly your sleep, all sorts of things, you have to kid yourself that, oh my God, maybe I'm working on a monster hit.
Yeah, but also, that thing of this is really, really going to come together in the edit that's the absolute mantra of any show that you don't think is going particularly well.
Yeah.
You just go, no, but actually, if you think about it
in the
edit, and maybe you know what, maybe they can add a voiceover so people understand what's going on, and then maybe it'd be huge.
Sorry, that to me is that is one of the old clangers, the alarm bell clanging. If you have to add a voiceover to make it make sense after you've spent an unbelievable fortune shooting it.
I always think on the Thursday Murder Club movie, I want them to do a voiceover. They don't have one at the moment, but I love it because the book has a diary in it, and I just want to hear Joyce doing a voiceover.
Love that.
So if that ends up with a voiceover, that's that's not because we've admitted defeat. It's because I finally got my way. Funny enough, The Fall Guy starts with a bit of VO, doesn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely, kind of which we talked about on Tuesday's show, and that felt like a kind of post-production VO.
Yes.
How do we find our way into this?
Here's one definitely for you. Quiz arguments from Sally Ann Bergen. Do contestants ever argue on quiz shows that the correct answer is what they said?
Yes, they definitely do. That's definitely true, especially on something like Pointless, when there's lots and lots of answers can come through. Quite often, they will say, well, so two different things. Firstly, they can dispute an answer. So they can go, no, I don't think that is an answer. I don't think it is in Hampshire. I think it's in Kent. And then, by and large, the question setters will immediately go, no, it's absolutely fine. Very occasionally, you'll get like a delay from the gallery and someone go, just give us 1 second on that. You're like, oh, no.
Oh, does that feel like a very long 1 second?
Yeah. But
just about 4 years.
My experience and the experience of, I would say, actually every presenter and producer is that is the question setters double, triple checking. The question setters have got like a icy stab of fear. They will look through it and they go, no, it's absolutely fine.
Oh, it's like getting a legal,
Yeah, or just, double going back over the sources that they've used. Occasionally people will say, no, that's what I said. They'll say, I said that. Like we had one like the pronunciation of a capital city. And I think between Paramaribo and Paranimbo, right? So
amazing. This is what I do when I've had a glass of wine and an argument about something.
I
said that. Yeah. I said it.
And then you have to go, is that actually close enough? It's like if you say Cliff Richards instead of Cliff Richard.
Yeah.
Do you give it? Do you not give it? It's there's lots of little essentially I wouldn't give that because he's so famous.
Yeah,
if someone's not that famous and you slightly get their name wrong, I'll give it to you.
If you say Keith Richards and Keith Richard, having him changed his name, then that's absolutely fine, that one. I think you can take both versions of the name that he's had at some point in his
exactly that.
life.
Or sometimes someone will say the name of a movie and actually it was called that in China or America, and then you know.
I was talking about the Belgian release.
You'll take exactly,
right,
and you go, okay, it's fine, you got it. But the pronunciation thing is hard. But then everyone's microphone is isolated, and so in that sort of situation, if it's like a words round or something, and so two words can sound similar. And then in the gallery, they will literally play it back. They will isolate the microphone. They'll have the sound engineers, all of whom have the ears of bats. And they will say, this is the word that they said.
This is what you said.
Yeah.
I'm so glad this doesn't happen in my arguments.
I know.
The microphone's been isolated and we're playing back what you actually said, Marina.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
You said you would be back by 8. You actually said that you would be back by 8. And so there is a whole, I've talked before how brilliant question writers are, so they very, very rarely get things wrong. Sometimes it does happen. Sometimes there are questions which have different answers. There was recently on the 1% Club, there was a question, because they have quite a lot of logic-y things on that. So there was a question that was written in such a way that the answer could have been 2 different things. And on that occasion, I think people objected, and the question writers will never go, oh no, because the question writers go, do you know what? Hands up. There are 2 different ways that could be
lovely,
answered.
clever, and gracious.
Yes, exactly.
And I like that.
But by and large, questions get rid of that. By if questions sometimes are quite long, because they'll say which hit single of 1984 by this band in this country was X. They'll put in all these different things so that there can only be one possible answer to the question. In a bad pub quiz, sometimes there'll be a question that you just think, but because of the way you've worded that, there could be 3 or 4 different answers to that.
I've quite frequently had to have steers and quotes at pub quizzes myself.
But people, if they think, people just feel stupid if they said the wrong answer, and they're like, no, that's what I said, and not, but it very rarely gets out of hand. But yeah, all sorts of shows, all sorts of shows. Mastermind has stopped sometimes because you just go, no, those people really know their specialist subjects, and they'll say, no, I think that's wrong because of X, Y, and Z, and sometimes they're proved right. But I can always spot University Challenge, Mastermind, or anything where someone does an answer, and then Amol Rajan will say, yeah, I can give you that because that is actually what they're called in parts of the world. That there has been a 20-minute gap in between that answer and Amol Rajan saying that. If you ever see Clive Murray or Amol Rajan saying, yes, can accept that because, then there is literally the whole studio has shut down for such a long time as they've tried to look through what can or can't be an answer. But yeah, so it happens. It happens very, very rarely. And if someone tries to get away with something, they never get away with it because they're completely, the mic is isolated. And if they have a good argument, the question setters and writers will go into it and then go, do you know what? That is a possible correct answer to this. And then the poor presenter has to come up with a form of words that kind of go, well, yeah, I guess. We ended Tuesday's show with a cliffhanger, so let's end this one with an explosion, shall we? This is a question from James, not the band, I'm assuming. Although you never know.
No, could have all dialed in together.
They're on tour. They're going, do you know what? We should do a question for the rest of the entertainment. They go, what should it be? And Tim Booth is like, I've got one. And the rest are going, oh, maybe. Like the drummer is like, oh, actually, I've got one about explosions. And Tim Booth's go, no, this is my band. We do my question, which is about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah.
But then the rest of the band go, actually, Tim, maybe we have a vote. Anyway, James, let's assume a person. But if it is the band, that's what's happened.
Certainly using the first person singular here. So.
Yes, exactly. Listen, I know I said we're going to end with an explosion. Now I did listen, what nonsense. But James asked a question about when cars or vans are blown up on television programs, which happens an awful lot.
Yeah.
And he's asking whether that causes a lot of pollution, whether that pollution has to be offset every time you explode a van, or whether there's some sort of special effects trick involved in these scenes, which means no pollution at all. And that's the drummer from James.
Right. Okay, in general, there's a sort of golden rule about this, which is that it is much cheaper to torch a car than it is to create the impression that a car has been torched using VFX.
Oh, you're telling me about it.
Very, very expensive.
That was my teenage years.
Yeah. So
really, it's cheap. It's so cheaper to blow up a car than make it look like a car is blown.
Yes, and oh my God, yes, by a long way. Far as it is an expensive post-production effect. They will often, depending on your budget, and if it's just some sort of, ordinary cop show, then probably not. But you might enhance fire in post, and you will enhance explosions in post, but you might have some level of practical to start with. It's very, very expensive to do it all from nothing. But obviously in things like the big, franchise and action movies where you see it, some of that will have come from absolutely nothing. In terms of the environmental impact, all of the engines and everything, there's no engine in any of these things, and a pyrotechnics expert has set it up, and it's probably less polluted. It's obviously less polluted than blowing up an actual car.
It's actually good for the
it's actually, if anything,
planet.
It's put something back.
Yeah.
But the sustainability officers will come and tell you that you can't. You'd have to argue if you needed to do lots and lots and lots. But in general, people have found that they've done these things in post production for various reasons, because it's a lot of planning, those kind of big explosive stuff. If you're just torching a van to destroy evidence, as your question says, James, the band or the person, you will take all the inside parts of it out, all the engine and all that sort of stuff, and a pyrotechnics expert will wire it up, and it will be a lot cheaper doing it that way than it will be asking some VFX house to do the whole thing for you. I mean, that it just becomes so expensive. That's a big problem, is just how and it's often why many effects these days are looking so bad, because it is so expensive. There are not enough, either there hasn't been enough work, or they've had to do it all too late at the end in order to make one of those big release dates.
But in terms of pollution, it's kind of fun. Everything is stripped out, and
yes.
Listen, vans catch fire.
Well, anything catching fire is not great for our environment, but it's not that big compared to a lot of other things.
James will know that from tour buses and stuff. Anything that goes up,
must come down.
Must sit down. There you go, and that's where they got that song from.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it all comes together, doesn't it?
That's super.
Yeah.
On that absolute bombshell explosion, I think we should conclude.
I think we should.
Do please keep sending in your questions. The address is therestisentertainment@gmail.com, and we will get to as many of them as we can.
We will indeed. And we'll be back on Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
Regular episode. See you next Tuesday, which we're legally now allowed to say.
Yes.
We should do some merch. See you next Tuesday.
Bye-bye, guys.